He's from the,
Okay.
all right. Well, thank you all for joining us today. My name is Rolando Villalobos. I'm Assistant Director and Assistant Dean of the Bechtel International Center. That's that building that you're seeing there. And I have my colleagues here today. Hannah Cho is here. She is extremely important for all of you because she helps create those documents that you're asking about. And my colleague Elsa is also here. She's associate.
Yeah,
she's
a lot of people know me because I've been answering emails.
aha.
Yes, and I've seen a couple of people who I recognize their names.
Good.
And we've already emailed, so there you go.
There you go. You already have a friendship going on.
Yeah.
And Sean's here also. Sean's normally yeah, he's normally our gatekeeper. When you enter this building here on the second floor, there's a lobby up there. And normally he would be the first person you would be in contact with, greeting you. But we haven't been at work for, I don't know, 14, 15 months, some ridiculous amount of time. We never thought the pandemic was going to stay around this long, and it's impacted everyone in so many different ways. We clearly understand the issues that you all are facing. Today, I have, what I want to do is I want to go through not all the slides. This is 23 slides, and this will be saved also in our orientation website, which we're updating as we speak. And what I'd like to do is I'll go through the more critical slides. I'll spend more time. The other ones I might just breeze over. But feel free to ask questions after I've stopped talking. Hannah and myself will be chatting along the way. And that might be in about 20 something minutes. We'll stop chatting and then we'll have plenty of time for questions. We'll hang around for questions, okay? We want to be able to answer those questions right now. And so speaking of how to answer your questions, there's an email that you're familiar with, right, Elsa? This one right here, the new international grads one. When you do email us, make sure you include your student ID number. And if you already have a Sevis number that starts with the letters N00, please include that. We have advising sessions Monday through Thursday, individual ones. They get booked very quickly, okay? So if you say, oh, I can't find it, it's because someone beat you to it. We have the group advising. These are very popular. I would encourage you to attend these. These are Thursdays and Fridays, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Yeah, on each Thursday and Friday. So just log in and answer your question. You can log out if you want. Zoom in, zoom out. All right. And so we have just understand that we're working from home. It does take us a few days, 4 or so days, to answer general email questions. Just be patient, please. Be patient, and we'll be able to help you. All right. Our website link, you guys should be familiar with that. If you like us in Facebook, we're going to like you back. All right. Very good. So our topics real quickly, we'll talk mostly about F1 and J comparison. That's super important. If some of you haven't made up your mind yet as to what visa type you're going to come under, we'll chat about this now. Some questions about arriving at Stanford. We'll be doing some orientation workshops later on probably in the summer, I would say in August and in September, and those will be recorded, okay, also. And I'm going to focus also about what duration of status means. This is the length of time that both J1 or F1 students are admitted for in the United States. Certainly we'll talk about employment. That's always a hot topic. And we're going to talk about travel because this is a very hot topic right now. Not only travel after you've entered the US, but travel right now trying to enter, period. Okay, there's a lot of issues regarding that.
I just want to jump in, Rolando. We have a lot of issues that I'm seeing in their emails about students who are very concerned about even getting a visa.
Exactly. That is the hot topic right now.
The hot topic we should
exactly. We will. All righty. So let's switch over to the comparison of visa types. Those of you that haven't yet figured out which visa type you're going to use, basically there's 2 types, F1 and J1. Not everybody qualifies for the J visa. So the issue with the J is that if you're being funded heavily by personal or family funds, you won't qualify. So you're funded over 50% personal family funds for the J1 visa, you're not going to We can't issue it, okay? I would say over 95% of students enter the US in F1 status. Let me compare these very quickly. Regarding on-campus employment, both F and J visas allow you to work in the United States for up to 20 hours a week. F1 students do not need authorization during the academic year. J1 students do need authorization from the sponsor. If physically Stanford issued you the DS 2019, then we are your sponsors. We'll issue you the authorization to work on campus. So both permit 20 hours a week. If you have a 50% research or teaching assistantship, you are maxed out. You are at the 20 hours per week limit. All right, you cannot work anymore. You work anymore, you've become what I call documentarily challenged or visibly impaired. Those are my terms of endearment for people that screw up. I'm very informal, by the way, if you haven't heard my tone yet.
Rolando, I'm putting the link to that chart in the chat. People
all
can
right.
use it afterwards. Okay.
Great. And that's mentioned in one of the links way at the end of this presentation, which is good. Thanks for doing that. The off-campus employment, this is super important. Many of you will have questions about this. Most of you F1 students who work this a year from this June, okay, after you've been in status 3 quarters, an academic year, you're probably going to work under something called curricular practical training, your first summer, that you're here. That authorization is issued by my office within about 10 working days. It's a great work permit, but you need authorization. Anytime you work off campus, you have to have authorization. Otherwise, you will violate your legal status. J1 students, you have something called academic training. It's a awkwardly termed name for permission to work off campus, but that's what it is. If you're here doing a PhD, you can get up to 36 months of academic training. If you're doing a master's or if you're an undergrad, you can only get 18 months of academic training. And any employment you do prior to graduation eats away at those 18 months, initial 18 months. So be careful what you do, okay? F1 students, curricular practical training does not eat away at post-OPT unless one super rare scenario, and I only had one PhD student who did not know how to count in 32 years. This guy amassed 365 days. Only PhD students can make this mistake because they're the only ones that are here that long. A full-time CPT, and forfeited his OPT, optional practical training work permit, after graduation. That was a big mistake on his part. But it's so rare. I mean, basically, you can work under curricular training. I can comfortably say it's not going to affect you negatively. I mentioned a little bit about post-OPT or employment after graduation. F1 students, you normally have 12 months of post-OPT. Those of you that are in the STEM field have an additional 24 months. So a total of 36 months of legal stay after you graduate. So if you're doing a 2-year master's and you're in the STEM field, you get 3 years of employment opportunity after you graduate. J1s, I mentioned you have 18 months of academic training. If you're a PhD student, you get an additional 18 months to do postdoctoral type work, let's say. But in general, anything that you do after a PhD is postdoctoral. So it's just that the academic training is issued by my office if we are your sponsors. And for post-OPT, the work permit's issued by the Immigration Service. They take 3 to 4 months to issue that permit. Normally 3 to 4 months, okay? All right, so let's dive into the bigger difference between these two, the funding. F1 students, PhD students, we can make, and undergrad students and master students, we make the I-20 based on a 9-month budget for the length of time of your study. PhD students, we issue the I-20 for a total of 7 years, all right? It's a long time. You will finish before, but sometimes you don't. That's why we issued them initially now for 7 years. That's the I-20. I'm going to show you a picture of the I-20 in a minute. J1 visa holders, we issue the DS 2019 also for the length of time that you're studying, but the funding becomes exponentially a bigger number. So let's say that for issuing an I-20 for a master's student or a PhD student or undergrad, we use the 9-month budget. Let's just, for the sake of argument, let's say it's about $80-something thousand, tuition, living expenses, and it's a little bit of ice cream. Well, with J1s, when we issue a DS-2019 for a PhD, you're looking at over $500,000 of funding that you need to provide proof of to us before we can issue this document. So they're just different documents based on different rules, codes of law. But in a nutshell, that's what that is. Dependents, here's another big difference between the two visa types. Dependents of F1 visa holders are called F2s. That could be a spouse. It could be a same-sex partner, by the way, or children that you might have. F2s cannot work in the United States. And I've seen this question over and over again. Oh, can my F2 work on a project at our apartment in Stanford, but they're not getting paid in the US, they're working for a company outside the US. No, that F2 is in the US, cannot be working for anybody, period. The J2 visa holder, after they've obtained a work permit, could work in the United States, full-time even, okay? And another advantage of the J2 is that they could also attend school full-time. F2s, you can attend school, you can do a vocational or recreational school work, but if you're seriously an F2 wanting to go to school full-time, you need to switch status to F1. And I would not advise you to change status within the US. Changing status within the US can take easily 7.5 months or longer. I've seen one that took 11 months, a year and plus ago. Most likely, if you switched from F2 to F1, you would depart the country, go back home, get the visa, and then re-enter in F1 status. So again, F2s cannot work, J2s can, but only after they've obtained the work permit from the Immigration Service. That's the USCIS office, United States Citizenship and Immigration Service office. So in a nutshell, that's basically it. Do we have students entering Stanford and attend another types of visas? Extremely rare. But could they? Well, if that visa allowed for that, sure. But I can tell you, you would not be able to work on campus. You wouldn't, because if you were here on a visa that was focused on some other issue, of employment, let's say, you got to focus on employment. But we'll chat more if someone brings up a question about that in a minute. Many of you have already started asking for I-20s, right, Hannah? How many do we have, Hannah, pending right now? 700?
We have close to 7 applications request already.
700, not 7. 700, yeah. Yeah, that's a lot. So what you do is you go into this new database system that we have, Bechtel Connect, and you go into the student section, you click on the initial one, and it takes you through. Make sure that you submit the PDF files of proof of funding sources. Should we mention anything else on that, Hannah? Their passports?
So make sure that you submit a copy of your passport and then funding document and updated admission letter so that we can process your request as soon as possible. And I'd like to thank you, everyone, for your patience, because we have a lot of requests in our queue and we're working so hard to process your request as soon as possible.
Yeah, thank you very much. The documents that we're trying to process are the I-20s. This is what an I-20 looks like. Okay, and your I-20 will have a start date. This is, if you're not in a professional school, let's say the MBAs have a different start date, School of Medicine, the law school, they all have different start dates, but 90-something% of the students will have probably September 20th, 2021. This was issued for a PhD student that should graduate before Sunday, June 11th, 2028, okay? And this is the document that you will physically take along with your passport, letter of acceptance to Stanford, any proof of funding sources that you might have, and to go request the visa in the passport. The visa that you're trying to get is an F1 for F1 status. You obtain your status upon entry to the US, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But this is the document. The long name of this document, we just call it the I-20. It's called a Certificate of Eligibility for Non-Immigrant Student Status, all right? And even though you have the visa, that doesn't mean that you have the status yet. You have to physically enter the United States to obtain that status. The port of entry official, the Customs Border Protection, CBP officer will grant you that entry and I'm taking that for granted, and let you enter the US in F1 DS, and I'll talk about duration status in a minute. J1 students, your DS 2019 document looks like this, okay? And the long title of the DS 2019 is a Certificate of Eligibility for Exchange Visitor Status, parentheses J1 J non-immigrant. And yeah, this, if you have dependents, we see that many J's visas, DS 2019s that we issue tend to have dependents. You and your dependent can go to the embassy or consulate to request the visas at the same time. If you get married later on and your dependent can go without you to request the visa in the passport, that's not a problem. Like I said earlier, if you're same-sex partner, you can obtain either the F1 or the J1. And as a dependent, you would be a J2.
But
Okay?
unmarried couples, unfortunately, we can't
Exactly.
process a dependent document for you.
Right, right. So we see a lot of people getting married, huh? In the summer. Yep. Hey, only do it for love, okay? Only do it for love, because otherwise lust doesn't last as long, okay? So love, remember that. I'm talking from someone who's been married for over 32 years, so hanging in there. After you obtain the I-20 or the DS 2019, you're going to pay the Sevis fee. So this is a fee that helps fund the exchange visitor program in the Sevis database. Sevis stands for Student Exchange Visitor Information System. It's Big Brother watching you. Remember George Orwell, 1984? This is Immigration Service seeing your registration, seeing when you enter the US, seeing when you depart the country. They know your date of birth, and they won't send you a birthday card, but they do know all of that information, okay? So you have to pay this Sevis fee prior to going to the visa appointment. If you don't pay this fee, you're not getting your visa in the passport, okay? So do a printout once you pay the Sevis fee, do the printout. If you had paid the Sevis fee last year because you're still trying to get in, we know that there's students out there, especially Beijing and from, actually I said Beijing, it's China, let's say, and Brazil. It's not uncommon that you guys are still trying to get a visa. Well, the embassies and consulates are closed right now. And we're seeing students going to other countries to request visas, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So again,
Rolando, we have a student in chat who says he can't see the slides in the current mode that you have it in. Could you switch it to presentation mode? Would that be okay? I guess it's small. For them, it's very small.
okay, hold on. Slideshow. Let's see. Present, not presenter view. Play from current slide. Yeah, let's try that. Okay, I'm back. Can you see it?
Yeah, that's better. I think.
All right, good. All right, very good.
We also have a lot students putting a lot of questions in chat. Should they put them in Q&A, Hannah?
Yeah, and wait till I'm
Yes.
done.
Yeah.
I should, you know, there's the, I'm not going to go through every single slide completely.
I think we have a lot of questions. So
yeah, and right, and I'm going to hold. I want to hold off just yet because I'm going to cover quite a few things still. So pay the fee. You've got the connections there. If you've paid the fee over 12 months ago, and you did not obtain the visa and your passport, you're expected to pay the fee again. All right. So the fee is only good for 12 months. If you have questions regarding the fee, email that link that we have there, the fmjfee.sevis@ice.dhs.gov. Email them. They're pretty good about responding. Give them your specific situation. They'll be able to respond. All right. So let's continue on. Just some tips here. When you pay the Sevis fee, obviously you're using the Sevis number on your I-20. It's very important to use the same one, for the very, very first time you've entered the country in F1 status. If you're in Europe and you're a J1 visa holder, you got to look into the national interest exemptions also. There's some information down below and some links that I put in the back of this presentation about that. And I'm being very conservative. We're saying purchase a refundable airline ticket or travel insurance in case your travel plans change, because they can book appointments. And we saw this out of Beijing last year, right? Students were making appointments in June. They got appointments got switched to October, and from October they got switched to this April. Okay, So be careful on the airplane ticket, or don't purchase it just yet. But the later you wait, the more expensive it gets. There's possibility that you may be able to expedite your visa appointment, but you can only do that 60 days before the start date of the school term. School starts in September, so that means what? July, right? Late July, you wouldn't be able to do a request for an expedite. But you also can't apply for a visa too soon or too early. Once you get your I-20, and we'll talk about the visa in a minute, you can only apply at the earliest 120 days before. Let's see. This is just a real quick sample of a expedite support letter from the department. Departments are aware of this. Don't worry about it now. We communicate with departments a lot about how they're able to help you also. This is a general visa process flow chart. So you get accepted to Stanford, great. You request the I-20 through Bechtel Connect. My colleagues issue the document. Oops, hold on here. And then you pay once you know the Sevis number, you pay the Sevis fee. I believe it's $350 for F1s, $220, I believe, for J1s. Then you go to the embassy, you apply for the F1 or the J1 visa, you take your documents. The documentation that you get with your I-20 or DS-2019 explains to you step-by-step things that you need to be doing, okay? Then you deal with the consular office or the embassy. They review that you paid the Sevis fee. You may or may not get a serious security check. If you get one of the ones that are, it's called administrative processing, you will be delayed. Okay, how long? Well, 2 to 4 weeks is what they say, but I don't believe them. I think it's closer to 8 weeks. And in some cases, it could take a very long time, much longer. But for now, I'm telling you, 4 to 8 weeks processing if you get administrative processing, okay? But time will tell, because it's a different entity that's reviewing your request that's pending with the embassy official, visa officer. So the other entities could be the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI. Not uncommon for them to do background checks, especially if you're doing very sensitive type. I mean, if you were doing satellite technology, I think you might have a high probability of getting administrative processing done. So, and then let's say you get the visa, which I'm expecting that you will. Then you arrive at the port of entry, and then the immigration official, Customs Border Protection official, will do the check-in for you. They do the biometrics, which I feel very intrusive, but that's what you got to do. The fingerprints, the whole visuals, eye scan, the whole bit, they do all of that. And they admit you to the United States under what's called duration of status, okay? And then you're in the US, and now you go to school. Focus on going to school, because that's what you're here to do, right? The visa and the passport, this can only be obtained outside of the United States. And you can see here the letter M for multiple entries, which is great. It's reciprocal. If your country's nice to me, I'm nice to you. That's the mentality. So students, let's say a PhD student that's here for 7 years from China could possibly get a visa that lasts 5 years. Because if I was to go to China, I would get a visa to enter your country for 5 years, all right? Brazil, I think it's, I'm trying to think, I think it's 4 years for Brazil. But in some other countries, it's sometimes much less. The visa and the passport, let me go to the next slide. They cannot be renewed within the US. They can only be obtained outside the US. And you get something that's called a machine readable visa, MRV, and it's a fix. I call it a stamp, just out of habit. It's placed on the passport itself, okay? And Canadians don't need one. Not even during the Trump administration. I thought Mr. Trump was going to slam you guys with getting visas, but he didn't. But everybody else needs visas, okay? So if you had a visa issued, an F1 visa issued, let's say for previous school, even though you have a different Sevis number, we've been told that you could use that along with Stanford's I-20 to enter the United States. And then after you've entered, if that visa expires, fine. You can remain in the country with an expired visa. What should not expire ever while you're attending school is your I-20 or your DS-2019. All right. So like I said, you may remain in the US after your visa has expired. But if you departed, you need to get a new one. Now, ideally, you go home, you go to your home, you obtain the visa in your home country. But of course, we're seeing because of the pandemic, embassies and consulates are not open in some countries. So what we're seeing is students going to another country, and in that case, you're known as a third country national, TCN, and the embassies are very aware that we're seeing students, let's say from China, going to Singapore to request the visa and waiting it out there. As long as you can enter and stay in that country long enough, that's great. To get the visa, then fantastic. We're seeing students going to all sorts of different countries. Students going to Chile, like I said, students going to Singapore, Ecuador, Peru. It just depends on the turnaround time of the visas also. You're going to have to do a little homework. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Let's see, swinging over here to the arriving. This is our website that has information about coming to Stanford. We're working on this website as we speak. We're going to upload quite a bit of new information. We'll also do mention some dates of workshops that we're going to be doing for maintaining your legal status, to give you a little refresher course on that. Hannah, these students, many of them have already done the STARS training, right?
Yes, so as soon as they submit the request, they will get the STARS training link so that they can complete the training before we send the document.
Yeah, could you tell them a little bit about what that training involves?
So the STARS training, I'm sure that a lot of you, if you submit the request in Bechtel Connect, received email with the link to the STARS training, which covers basic information about the visa, how to apply for visa, what kind of required documents you have to bring, and what kind of documents you have to bring for your trip to the US.
Okay, very good. All right, so this is what the time frame for what's called duration of status. And this is for someone who is in STEM field. If you're saying what's STEM, well, you're not getting those extra 24 months on section 4 of this timeline that I put here. Someone who's not in STEM field would get the first, second, and third period right here. And after they finish their studies, finish their 12 months of OPT, optional practical training, they could stay 60 days in the United States. But those of you that are in the STEM field can apply 90 days before this work permit expires for these extra 24 months, as long as you work for an E-Verify company. We can chat about that later. But essentially, this is a very long time for you to stay and finish your degree. Undergrads, you're typically looking at 4 years, but this presentation focuses on grad students. So master students, you're typically giving 2 years, unless you're in a very specific program, like the MSX program. That's 11 months. You're only getting an I-20 for 11 months, all right? There should be plenty of time for you to finish your degree. Master students, like I said, most masters, we give a document for 2 years. PhDs, we're giving them for 7 years right now. The DS20, I'm sorry, the I-20s. The DS 2019s, those of you that enter using the DS 2019 enter as J1s. Once you finish your studies, you only have 30 days to remain in the country. All right. You don't get these 18 months unless prior to you finishing, prior to you graduating, you have provided to us a job offer letter. F1 students, you guys are different. You don't have to provide a job offer letter to be able to get this 12 months of OPT. You just simply propose employment in your field of studies 90 days before you graduate, you send off the application, send them the money, complete application, and you'll get the work permit 3 to 4 months later. J1 students, you have to have a job offer. So 6 months at least prior to you graduating, you are looking for work, a job, okay? Because if you don't get, I need to issue you the extension before you graduate on that Sunday, June, whatever it is. We need to issue the extension based on employment, okay? Just be aware of that. We'll have workshops on that in the future. Don't worry too much, but just be aware of it.
Rolando,
yeah.
We have 39 questions.
Okay, I'm almost done.
I think we have to really hustle. Yeah.
That's it. I'm hustling.
Yeah.
We'll do speed dating questions real quick.
Okay.
So again, you're admitted for duration of status. The employment, we can talk a little bit more later, but basically we already talked a little bit about it. We're going to be doing very specific workshops on this topic. And just be patient with us regarding answering your questions in the future when you do email us. All right. These are important web links. And again, I say welcome to Stanford. So
Yes.
let's take some questions. Well, I'll answer as quickly as I can too. Or my colleagues can pitch in too. Let's see, Valerie showed up earlier. She's also one of my colleagues, Valerie Todd and Mario Mihalchik. They're both excellent advisors. They deal with immigration topics. They know this stuff inside and out, by the way. We're not the only ones. They are very knowledgeable. And Junko Perry, who's not here today, but all of my colleagues extremely knowledgeable. All right, what questions? How do we?
Who's reading?
Hannah, do you
Valerie,
want
would you like to? Sure.
Or
Okay,
Valerie?
so there
Or,
are, yeah, Valerie, can you read the questions so that I can answer the questions in the chat?
thank you.
My spouse may want to work for her employer who has an office in the US. If she applies independently for a work visa, can that supersede an F2 visa? Should I even apply for an F2 visa for her in the first place?
Okay, this is a complicated question. F2s cannot work in the US, period. Even if that company exists in the US, they cannot. So changing status from F2 to some other type of non-immigrant visa is an attorney question. We have 4 or 5 attorney workshops during the course of the year. The next one we have won't be till probably September or October. So the question is, should I just wait, not have them enter an F2 status and they enter on a employment-based permit? That might be the better option. But again, that question needs to be answered by an immigration attorney. The change of status within the US takes a very long time, and it's highly unlikely an employer is going to be patient. How long? I would guesstimate 7 months. The Immigration Service says on their website, typically 4 to 7.5 months. I'm sarcastic on this one. I think it'll take a solid 7 months to do a change of status within the US. But most of the time, the individual who is an F2 would leave the country, obtain the visa stamp for whatever visa category they're going to enter. Let's say an L1 or L2, that's our intra-transfer company visa, where the student enters, or an H1B, the students from Singapore. Well, maybe that's the better option. They'd leave the country and come back. But that's a hot question. Can't answer it completely, but again, it might be smarter just to enter under that specific visa category, and then they just enter and go to work instead of waiting for the change of status, which I think will take a very, very long time to do within the US. And it's highly advisable. Most people would say to leave the US, get the proper visa status that you're going to enter, and then enter the country. Next question.
I am worried that I won't get a visa in time and need to defer. Can I hold the payment until being sure I will get the visa?
That's a good question.
I can take that one.
Okay.
So right now, we're in the process of trying to get all the right people at Stanford to the table to talk to them about the fact that some of our students will not be able to get here. You, in terms of your personal decision about whether you want to defer for an entire year or until winter quarter, if it doesn't look likely you'll get a visa stamp to get here in the fall, you need to circle back with your department. In terms of your accountability, in terms of payment and down payments, that's what we're working on now. So I will say to you, stay tuned and we'll get back to you, or the appropriate offices on campus will get back to you, because we are alerting them to the fact that our international students are in a tough situation right now, and that many of them some of them won't be able to get here. I'm not going to say many because I don't want to jinx it, but some of them won't be able to get here. So we want to make it as easy as possible for you to withdraw payments or get refunded somehow if in fact you aren't able to get here in the fall. So stay tuned. Yeah.
Thanks. Part of that question was asking about I thought the payment you were talking about was the Sevis fee payment, Form I-901. The Sevis fee payment, so yeah, the Sevis fee payment is good for only 12 months. So if you've already have been delayed since last year and trying to enter the country, and you're saying, oh, you know what, I might not be able to get in by September or get the visa in August or September to be able to start school on Monday, September 20th, then you're going to have to pay the Sevis fee eventually. But if you want to pay it closer to August or September, you may do so. But don't, if you have an appointment and you haven't and then you pay the fee 1 day before, they might not find you in the database, although you could print the receipt.
Yeah,
Okay.
a lot of embassies really want you to have paid the fee before you walk in for your visa appointment.
Exactly.
So
Right.
you do not have a choice about that, right?
Right. Right.
So that's
But
what you're talking about. Our advice is to actually pay it
right,
rather
you
than
pay.
jeopardize your appointment, right?
Right. So I've had a case where a graduate student showed up to the appointment without paying the fee. They couldn't find him. They could not find his request at all. But he said, "Hey, look, I made an appointment." Yeah, but they couldn't find him. So they're very picky about that. So maybe it's your decision when you pay it, but it has to show in the Sevis database that you paid it. And a matter of fact, if it doesn't reflect when you try entering the country, the official can deny your entry to the United States. So we always tell students the Sevis fee payment is done on a form called the I-901. The letter I stands for immigration, okay? And so print that receipt and carry it with you when you enter the country. By the way, when you enter the country, don't put your I-20 and receipts and all that information in a handbag that you naively put into the belly of the plane. You physically carry that with you. I want you to physically carry it with you in your pocket with a zipper locked, securely somewhere on your person, okay? Not on your backpack, on your person, because we've heard of students who've forgotten backpacks on the airplane or at some stall while trying to get a sandwich or something. All right.
Okay.
Next question.
No, we have 67 questions, Rolando. We got to speed it up. Yeah.
All right, to a minute.
Does sponsorship from a family-owned business qualify for the J1 visa?
You're pushing the system on that one, but technically, yes. But would your family support another student coming to the US? Okay, be very careful, because if it looks like you're justifying the J based on your family giving you the money, a State Department official could challenge you on it. But to answer your question, would Stanford issue the DS 2019 based on a company-based sponsorship? The quick answer is yes. Next question.
Orientation in Biopop is starting on the 13th of December. In order to arrange my arrival date to Stanford, I would like to know if international students will need to do quarantine before being allowed to go to campus.
Elsa, you want to answer that one?
So I think Stanford is working these things out right now, right? We don't know. I know that, of course, vaccination is a requirement of being on campus. So we will have to get a hold of who hasn't been vaccinated before the start of the quarter in order to ensure that they are vaccinated by the time that classes start. So a lot of details are still being worked out. And again, I would just say, stay tuned. It's just April. So Stanford's really working hard to address some of these more complicated questions.
Yeah, and you'd find the answer to that question eventually also in Stanford's own COVID link. Yeah.
It's-
Next question.
Sorry, I'm trying to read through an incoming MBA and I am an incoming MBA and have a consulate appointment in Berlin, Germany for the beginning of August. I would like to have some peace of mind and travel to the US in mid-August. Is it possible to apply for an emergency appointment to get the appointment and thus the visa earlier?
You can try. You can try. They only let you try to do the expedite appointments 60 days before. Your I-20 has a start date of what? September 9th?
No, what is it? The 10th?
Hannah,
MBA.
what's the start date of the MBA I-20? September
7th?
7th.
Oh, 10th for the MBA, and
Yeah,
then
that's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So September 10th. So you can try 60 days before that to do an expedite.
But generally speaking, the argument that you have for requesting an expedite is if your visa appointment that's scheduled is beyond the start date of your program.
Yeah. So if they're saying you already have one in August,
Yeah.
and you can only enter the country 30 days before the start date of the I-20. So in this case, it would be August 11th, I believe. It would be 30 days before. Do the math. But yeah, point well taken. Next question.
This is from an Indian student and talking about the devastation currently impacting India.
Right.
They're worried that things might not be better in time for them to get a visa. What other countries would you advise to keep in line of sight in case they need to go somewhere else for this visa?
This is a very hard question to answer
Mhm.
because I mentioned earlier that embassies and consulates are considering third country nationals. Because whenever you go to another country, you have to establish to the embassy official that you haven't broken your ties to your original country that you're from. But it's quite understandable that you're going to another country to try to figure out the visa situation. And so you have to see, can I enter that country and how long will I be permitted to stay in that country? Some countries only let you stay 30 days and you still have to quarantine probably. And if they can turn around and give you the visa in a week or two and you quarantine for 2 weeks, okay, maybe it could work out. But what countries? This is a hard question. My colleagues can maybe answer a little bit on this, but we've seen students trying to do Singapore, Mexico, Brazilian students going to Mexico because their appointments seem to be more easier. But also a few weeks ago, the appointments were not that too bad to get in Mexico. And now someone told me the other day was, Mario, was it you? Was it at least 20 something days, 30 days? Can't remember.
Canada, I talked to a student from Pakistan who's in Canada. He told me it was 13 months.
Wow.
But I talked to a student from Brazil who got a visa appointment in Belize. That was the most recent one.
Okay. All right. Well, this is going to take a lot of homework on your part. Yeah, we've seen students try to go to Malaysia, Ecuador, Peru, yeah, Chile, but you know, it's things change. They're very volatile. They change all the time. Go ahead, Elsa.
Yeah, I just want to say something here, and I know that a lot of you are feeling very stressed out about the visa situation as it currently is in many parts of the world, and we feel for you. And there's nothing more that we would want at Bechtel than for you to get here in time for fall quarter. But just to say, Stanford recognizes that some of you may not make it this fall because of the way things are playing out in some countries around the world right now. But if that does happen to you, we still want you to come. That just may not be this fall. So if you find yourself in the situation where you don't think you're going to make it for fall quarter, reach out to your department, talk to them about your options. You can always defer for fall quarter and try to make it for winter quarter. Or if worse comes to worse, you defer for the year, but you'll still get to Stanford. We still want you here.
Yep.
It's just, the world is a tough place right now. And the visa situation for some of you is daunting. And
Yep.
we know that. So just hear it from us. You will get here eventually, but if it's not this fall, it's not this fall. That's okay.
Yep. Yep. I mean, these are unprecedented times.
They really are.
Yep. So what's the next question?
Does the 60-day window to request an emergency appointment count from the date classes start or the earliest date you can arrive to the US?
No, it's from the start date of your I-20 or DS 2019. Yeah, so 90-something% of you have September 20th as a start date. GSB, Graduate School of Business, you have, actually there's 2 different dates for the GSB. For the MSX program, I think it's July 8th. For the MBAs, Hannah, you had said what, September 9th or so? Anyway, it's from the start date of the document. Next question.
We're getting some questions about the DS 160 application and being able to get appointments. And some of these are very consulate specific. So, you know, if you have a certain question about the DS 160 or when you submitted it and when you have to pay, things like that, it's best to contact the consulate where you submitted it already for your questions, because each one can be a little different. So we won't be able to answer some of those.
Yeah, the DS 160 is the application for the visa. That's, everybody has to do that except Canadian citizens. That's a very specific question. You're right, Valerie. They should be addressing that question to the specific consulate or embassy they're going to go to.
For applying for a visa from one's non-native country, is there any stipulations one should know about this situation?
You
Well,
need, go ahead.
You pointed it out, Rolando, in that there may be restrictions on entering as a tourist. Some countries require that you need a visa to enter. And if you are stuck there for administrative processing, you'll be there without potentially friends and family. If that's the situation, you may also find yourself denied a visa in a third country and be forced to return to your home country and reapply. So those are the kind of negatives of a third country application.
And it gets expensive.
And
We
it gets
know it gets
expensive.
super expensive. You're
Unless you have friends or family to stay with in that third country, so.
right, right. Yeah, that's pretty much it. You
Yeah.
know, will they let you in? You go in, you quarantine, then are you there long enough to get the visa?
Yeah,
You know, those are part of the unknowns that you really have to do homework on those yourself.
Yeah.
Next question, please.
There's a couple of questions asking about if a student is going to get a new I-20 with a new Sevis ID number if they've deferred their
It'll-
I-20.
That I-20 number will, high probability that it's going to stay the same. When I say high probability, Hannah, am I 99.9% right?
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah, we'll try to keep the same Sevis number. If you paid the Sevis fee earlier and you deferred, we change it. Fine. If you get the visa, but you can't get in for whatever reason on timely manner, you know, then we'll issue a new I-20 with a new start date, but you'll keep the same Sevis number.
so
Next question.
I'd like to interject there just quickly,
Mhm.
since I'm answering a lot of questions by
Mhm.
email in this regard. If
Mhm.
you're writing about whether your Sevis number will stay the same and you have been, and you did defer, please write me the email with your former Sevis number, with the
Yep.
Sevis number that you currently have and want to
Right.
check whether it will remain the same. And I'll check your Sevis record and make sure that it's an initial status. And
Yep.
if it is, I'll write you back and it's good to go. If we've had to terminate your record for one reason or another, then you won't be getting the same Sevis number again. We'll have to create a new I-20 for you. So just save yourself some time and send that Sevis number in the email when you ask that question.
Yep, very good. And I mentioned earlier, when you contact us, always give us your student ID number. It starts with 06.
Yeah.
And if you have a Sevis number, it starts with N00. Always mention those two numbers, please.
Yeah.
Next question.
The U.S. Embassy website mentions that the validity of the passport should be up to 6 months from when you depart from the U.S. So for PhD students with a varying duration of program, how long does the passport need to be valid?
When you enter the US, the immigration officer is always expecting you to have a valid passport that's good for at least 6 months. Now, there are passport agreements between your country and my country. If they do exist, you can enter, let's say, even though the passport's going to expire in a couple of months from the date of entry. In that case, you're going to have to request a new passport immediately after entering the country. You're going to have a brand new passport and the visa stamp that's valid on the old passport. You get a rubber band, you put both of them together, and that's how you're going to travel in the future. But you cannot have an expired passport while you're in the US. You're supposed to ask for a new one. So if your passport's going to expire in under 6 months, but there's a treaty agreement between my country and yours, you can enter the US. And like I said, immediately afterwards, focus on getting a new passport. Next question.
Students are asking about the timeline for obtaining an initial I-20.
The $1 million question. We traditionally would have told you 10 working days, but we have so much work to do. We've been slammed with hundreds and hundreds of requests. Hannah, you want to answer a little bit on this one? On the processing times?
So yes, we have received around 700 applications already. So we're working hard to get them done. So if you submit your request, let's say more than 30 days ago, then you can email us to check your status. But otherwise, the processing time for now is about 3 weeks. Thank you.
Three weeks?
Most students, Hannah, can go in and see whether their request is pending. So I would, since I'm doing all the emails, I would urge you to check that first before.
Yeah, don't send any more emails.
And if
Check.
it's pending, you will know that it hasn't been processed yet. I
Right.
just also want to say that this is a very unusual year for us in terms of I-20 processing, because a lot of students are very, very anxious about getting their I-20 now. That has never happened to us before at Bechtel.
No.
In previous years, students have been much more relaxed about the visa process because they knew they were going to get a visa appointment and be able to come over the summer. This year, everything's changed. Students are very anxious. They're very
Yep.
stressed. They want their I-20 now. We have never been able to turn around 700 I-20s in April. That's just not a
No,
part of what we
because
do.
yeah, we used to get them all through the summer.
Right, all through the summer.
June,
up until
July, August.
Right,
Yeah,
August.
August, we'd be making
We-
the
we
documents. Now
cannot
everything is
possibly-
shifted.
Yeah, we
Yep.
can't possibly turn
Yep.
around 700 by 20s in April.
Yeah.
So, people, we do ask for your patience and understanding here. We're
Yep.
trying to prioritize them according to start date. So we
Right.
have chosen those with earlier start dates to work on first.
Right.
Then we're trying to work through them as fairly and quickly as we possibly humanly can.
Yep.
And so really ask you for your patience. I get so many emails every day from people asking me what's happened to their I-20. Why haven't they gotten their I-20 yet? That's why I'm just telling you this is the answer, that everybody wants their I-20 too quickly this year. So we really do ask for your understanding and patience. Thank you.
Yep. All right. And remember, you can't even apply yet for a visa. 120 days is at the earliest. Some consulates use different rules, but generally speaking, 128 days is the earliest you could try to apply. Next question.
This is a question about the F1 visa holders in Europe who need the national interest exception. Do they need to do anything different in the application process? And do the F2s need it as well?
It's automatic for F1s, but Js have to apply to the
Yeah.
consulate.
So F1 and F2s don't deal with this exception, but J1s do. You apply directly with the consulate, and yeah, just follow the instructions that are on there. Okay.
Is it due to difficulties getting a new visa in China? Is it possible to stay in the U.S. during the switch from H-1B to F1?
That is an attorney question. So it's asking, can I do a change of status within the US? The quick answer is don't do that. Normally we would say go home and get the visa, or go somewhere and get the visa. The problem is you might violate your status because your H visa ends on a certain date. That is an attorney question. Can you apply for a change of status within the US? Yes, my office can issue you the I-20 and you can apply, but does it make it legal for you to overstay your status if you've run out of time to legally remain in the country? Again, that's an attorney question. Normally, we would advise you to leave the country, get the F1 visa and the passport. But if you're from China, well, you know you're not going to get a visa right now out of China. Maybe later you might, if the pandemic calms down a bit. But we're not seeing the pandemic calming down. Look what's happening in India right now, and in other places in Europe where surges have now come back. So we're very worried about that. Yeah, I think you need guidance on that from an attorney. All right, an immigration attorney. Next question.
Do you need to have the expedited letter from your department to request an expedited appointment at the embassy consulate?
No,
Is it a requirement?
No, no, you don't.
but it can often help.
Yeah, yeah. And by the way, we're in communication with departments about all these things. There with so many meetings that we have with them and keeping them up to date. Our directors and others always meeting with administrators and departments. And so at this time, if you approach the department, if they say, well, I don't know the template, well, there is a template out there. We've shared it with departments. And if for some reason someone hasn't seen it, it'll be made available to them.
Is it okay to mention that my J2 dependent plans to work in the US during the visa interview?
Very good question. Look, if you're obtaining the J1 just so that the J2 can work, you've just given the embassy official a reason to deny your J1 request. Because the primary reason for a J1 isn't so that the dependent can work. Okay, so now you're saying, oh, well, what answer should I do? Well, you give them an honest answer. The J1 allows for, academic training. If you were a PhD student and you were a PhD student in anthropology, not a non-STEM field, you're going to get 3 years of academic training. to help do a postdoc. That's a really good reason to get a J1. If you're a PhD student, you can do postdoctoral research work after you graduate, which is not uncommon.
You should
if-
never suggest in the visa interview that the J2's income will be used to support your living costs.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly, because that's the worry. And so when you asked for a J1, yes, the consequence of that is the J2 can work, but you got to show me all of the funding sources for the J2. If you're a PhD student, your PhD program is not going to give you $16,000 every 12 months where you're dependent. So you got to add $16,000 out of your family funding or somewhere to the request for the DS 2019. So you're saying, hey, I've got all of this money. And when I say all this money, you're looking at over $500,000 when we issue the DS 2019s. So when an embassy official reviews the request for J1 and J2 and they see Stanford funding, they go, wow, that's a lot of money. You won the lottery. You literally won the lottery. Okay. Now, if you said, well, yeah, I'd like to do academic training after I graduate. My spouse, my husband, who's going to be here while I'm doing my PhD, he'd like to attend classes. Well, one of the benefits of being a J2 is that you can actually attend school full time. Okay, so, but if you say, oh, I want my J2 dependent to work, they're going to think that they need to support you, and they'll deny you the visa. Okay, I'm just being very upfront and frank with you. Always be honest at the time of an interview, by the way. All right, you never want to lie to a federal official. But like I said, a huge advantage of the J is the academic training for someone who's on a humanities based degree, because you get up to 36 months. Otherwise, if you're an F1 doing a PhD in anthropology, you only get 12 months of employment authorization. All right, next question.
How do we
We've
know? How do we know if our I-20 has been processed and sent? If so, can we get an electronic copy so that we can book the visa appointment?
Okay, Hannah, you want to answer that question, please?
Sure. So as soon as we issue visa documents, we email them before FedExing the document, so that with the Sevis ID and tracking number, so that you can make schedule an appointment in advance.
And the question was, do you send a PDF or do you send an original I-20?
So we usually send the physical I-20s and DS-319s, but if you need to have the digital copy also, you can ask via email.
Yeah, I would say that I just want to interject here just to clarify. When we send you your Sevis number by email, as soon as we've processed your I-20, you don't really need the rest of your I-20 until the hard copy arrives, because you
Correct.
have the vital information you need to pay the Sevis fee and to schedule the embassy appointment. So to circle back to us again and ask for an electronic copy of your I-20,
Yeah.
it is your prerogative,
Yeah.
but there's no real necessity for it since you have the vital information you need. So we
Yeah.
ask you just to sort of let us get going with the I-20 processing, to hold off on that request, or
Right.
create your own electronic version of the I-20. When you receive your hard copy, you can sign it and scan it and get your own digital copy of your I-20 for yourself. So there's no
And we're-
need right now to ask for an electronic copy.
Yeah. I'll be blunt, it's more work for us. And
It's
right
more
now,
work for us, yeah.
I'm not mincing words. We don't need more work. I
Right.
start working at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
regularly. And so my colleagues put in tons of hours too. So you're going to get it. You got the Sevis number. That's what you need.
That's what you need. The
That's
Sevis,
right.
that will be emailed to you as soon as we process your I-20.
Yep. Very good. Next question, please. I'll stay answering more questions if need be, no problem, but go ahead.
Are there any vaccinations required to enter the US and the school?
Yeah, so Vaden will send you a list of things that are required in terms of vaccinations. I also saw in the chat that somebody from China was asking whether they'll be required to have an additional vaccine for COVID when they arrive. And does the United States accept vaccines from around the world? Stay tuned. I have posed this question to our health center. It's been asked from several sources, so I don't know the answer. But yes, you'll get a full list of vaccines that will be required. And for those of you who have had other kinds of COVID vaccines and are arriving to campus, we'll give you information in that regard as well.
Yep.
Is there
Here in
any?
the, I was going to say, here in the US, we get a little card. And if you get the type of vaccine that requires two vaccines, they'll mention the dates that both vaccines were given to you. Go ahead.
Is there any source of funding besides the department that can cover the expenses of traveling to get a visa as a third-party national?
No,
No.
no. Yeah, that's an easy, unfortunately, it's an easy question to answer. No. All right, next.
Can you provide some information on visa refusal due to technology alert list and possibly how to avoid getting that?
That's a hard question. You don't have control of that.
Yeah.
You know, the technology alert list, that's been around for a long time. People think, oh, it's just happened recently. It was during World War I when German students were trying to enter the United States, and a German student was studying chemistry. They wouldn't let him into the country, you know? So that's a hard question to answer. If you are part of the technology alert list that pops up, you're subject to whatever length of time that processing might take. And if it's denied, you'd have to contact the Bechtel International Center. It would be very difficult, depending on the denial section of the law, to be able to try to change that. Okay, but those don't happen very often. So don't be stressing on it just now, okay? Because they really don't happen very often. I've been here a very long time and I haven't seen very many of those denials. All right, next question.
Can an F2 dependent study full-time at a foreign university, like online while they're in the US?
That's a really good question. The quick answer is no. I can, I know it doesn't make sense, okay? But the F2s are prohibited from attending school full time because the Immigration Service thinks that you're trying to go to school in the US. But the literature I have read on this one says, no, you're an F2, you can't be going to school full time. Now, if you're doing something avocational or recreational, F2s are able to do that. So I'm assuming that if it was part-time, then I would say yes, you know? So, but it's a really good question. It's a very rare question, by the way. So conservatively, I'm saying you couldn't do that just because immigration law looks at you as an F2 in the US. And they're saying you cannot attend school full-time. Okay, next question.
Just sorry, really quick. It's 9 o'clock.
Mhm.
There's 61 questions and they're still coming in. We could
Okay.
be here for another hour answering questions.
Well, I don't mind staying longer. I know that we have another Zoom that started 3 minutes ago. I think it's important that I stay at least and answer some more questions. If a couple of you want to leave, you could, but I'll stay, I'll hang in here and keep answering.
So why don't we, since we have another Zoom, I've just texted the people in the next Zoom, and why don't we hang out and answer these questions?
Yep, I think it's important to do so.
All right.
All right, let's continue. We're having too much fun here, guys.
Right. Next question.
Yep.
I understand that we have to self-isolate upon arrival. This may affect the ability for some of us to arrive in time for the physical start of classes. What should we do?
So we don't have the answers to those questions yet. There hasn't been a protocol established for the fall yet in terms of quarantine and vaccine and how this will be handled by Stanford when students move onto campus. So I would say stay tuned and we'll get that information to you over the course of the summer. I know that's hard for some of you because you want to schedule flights, but unfortunately Stanford is still working these things out. So hold off buying your tickets.
Yep,
Right.
I mentioned earlier, we're going to have another one of these sessions in May. I forget the date. Sean, do you remember the date? May, I want to say 12th or 14th. I can't remember. Anyway, we're going to have another one of these sessions and it'll be announced on our orientation part of the website. And if you can post that on the chat. Anyway, so as we find out more, we'll let you know. Next question, please.
There are quite a few vaccine questions and how that's going to work when you get here, when they get here. As Elsa said, we don't know those answers quite yet, so please stay tuned. The university will be giving us a lot more answers in the following months.
Very good. And I'm assuming if you can find the link to Stanford's COVID updates, you can post it on the chat. That'd be nice. But you guys should be familiar with that one already, because that is where we will hear and see the information. Okay. Next question.
I've tried to get an appointment in a backup country, but but they asked me to be a national or a foreign worker to get a visa in that country. What other options do I have?
Well, that I'll be blunt. That shuts that door immediately. You try to either find another country that has different criteria, or you might have to defer. Maybe don't come fall quarter, but maybe winter quarter. Maybe by winter quarter things will slow down and not be as crazy, and more people would have been vaccinated, and more vaccinations would have been available, and the embassies and consulates might be more accepting of people in your own country. Or like Elsa said, you might have to defer for a year, depending on how difficult it is to get the visa appointment. Okay. That's a tough question to answer. Yeah. Next question, please.
I am from India, which is facing a huge visa appointment issue. I've already deferred from fall 2020, and I am not allowed to defer again. If I don't get a visa, does that mean I will have to forfeit my admissions?
That's an admissions question for sure.
Yeah, I would circle back with your department about
Exactly.
we're all keenly aware of the situation in India, and our hearts go out to everybody right now. So we know this is a really tough time there. So please reach out to your department and tell them what's going on.
Yeah, definitely talk to your department. We know, we see our newspapers with headlines. The New York Times yesterday, huge headline about India. We're very concerned about that. And talk with your department, please. It's a very specific question that should be addressed at the departmental level. Okay.
This is a good one. Does being a founder of a nonprofit in your home country count as employment?
Well, let me tell you, when you're in the US, you're knocking on the front door of the US saying, let me in F1 status, I want to be a student. And so my question to you is, are you still working? If you were entering the country, were you planning on working for that company while you're in the US? And if the answer is yes, I'm gonna say, don't do that. Don't do that, because you're in the US focusing on studying. And I know a lot of students who have created companies prior to coming to the US. But if you can sever your connection, take a sabbatical, from the company, and then just let someone else run that part for you. I think would be very important. If you're receiving any compensation, or you're playing any role that it looks like you're still connected to them, you could be in violation of your status. Be very careful about this, okay? I had a law student who did some consulting projects while he was attending school, and he did something in the US and something outside of the US. And when he went to London to request a visa, the embassy official Googled that student, and guess what? That student bragged about all sorts of stuff, bragged about doing this, doing that. And the embassy official then asked him to complete a form that says, please list all employments, any type of employment done in the world. And the student failed to mention several employment opportunities that he had bragged about in LinkedIn and in the internet on the resume. Now, I'm not telling you to lie, never lie, but I'm telling you, be careful, okay? Because this could come back to haunt you later, because immigration officials and embassy officials do read what's in the internet, okay? So be cautious on that one. Now, if you're saying, no, but I need to do this, well, then leave the country, go back. I had an MBA once, and I said, okay, go back to Germany, work in Germany for that 3-4 days and get paid in Germany, and then come back to the US. Okay, that's an expensive option, but in that case, that's what that student did. All right. I know that's not a solution for everyone, but I'm telling you, be careful. All right, next question.
Sorry, I dismissed a question by Jonathan Weiss when I meant to type the answer. So Jonathan, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it until you know how long your visa is for. Sorry.
All righty.
Next question. If I fly directly from my home country to the US, but take a connecting flight to San Francisco, will that be a problem? Will I be required to quarantine at the first location I arrive?
Oh, you mean you arrive in Atlanta, and then from Atlanta you catch, or New York, and then you catch a flight from New York to San Francisco?
I'm guessing that's what they mean.
Oh, that's a good question. What do you guys think on this?
No, I mean, I think if you're just connecting through New York, you're there for a 4-hour layover to get on the plane and come to San Francisco, you won't have to quarantine in New York.
Yeah, but if you do a flight and you stay there for a few days and say, I want to go visit the Statue of Liberty, I want to do this, then I don't know, it becomes a different issue. But
Well, I
the
would
connecting,
definitely say not to do that because you're
Right.
supposed to, you don't want to make others sick and you don't want to arrive in New York and go out and do all these touristy things for a couple days and
Yeah.
possibly be spreading COVID. So
yeah. So ideally, if you can get a direct flight to San Francisco, great. Because San Francisco is only, 35 minutes away or so or less to Stanford, So, or San Jose. So you might land in San Jose, which is south of Stanford, or San Francisco, which is north of Stanford. San Jose is actually closer to Stanford than San Francisco by 10, 15 minutes. So yeah, ideally you fly directly, all right? Because sometimes if you get a connecting flight and the officer is trying to make out your information and they don't have enough time because 100 people got off the plane and they send you to secondary inspection, you could be in secondary inspection 10, 15 minutes or 5 hours and you could miss your flight, okay? So just a heads up on that. All right, next question.
is there an online system being put in place for classes in case we are not able to attend in person? Also, is the last date for entering the US by Stanford still October 2nd? Well, it's actually October 1st.
Right.
First, it's October 1st. Elsa, do you want to answer this one?
Sorry, the October 1st is from the immigration perspective. Your department may not allow you to come in that late.
Well, let me add to that. You're entering the country, you're knocking on the front door of the US saying, let me in. And it's up to the immigration official to determine your entry. So even though you have an I-20 that says September 20th, and we've internally said, okay, October 1, because you got to attend school, you got to attend classes. We're in a quarter system. The quarter system's much faster, okay? And so it's not only the departmental issue saying, yeah, you can enter a little after your I-20 start date, but it's also the immigration official allowing you to enter the US. In this case, it would be smart for you to obtain a letter from the department that you would be allowed to enter the country a little late and continue with your studies upon entry to the US. The other part of that question was about distance learning. And Elsa, do you want to answer that part about what the transition
Sure.
we're going through?
So the graduate schools at this stage have no intention of having any online options. So again, if you can't get here, you have to circle back with your department and figure out what your deferral options are. Okay.
Yep.
That's the way things stand right now.
Yeah, I mean, we'll know more the closer that we get to the summer.
Yeah, but I mean, the expectation is that
But the
people
expectation is that you arrive.
physically here.
Definitely, that's what you're hearing from us. You come to the US
Yeah.
because we're not seeing distance learning classes
No,
this coming September.
as
right.
things stand right now.
Right. And by the way, immigration law prohibits an F1 student. Once the pandemic special guidance is waived, let's say it's not available anymore. In general, immigration law prohibits an international student who is physically attending school in the US to take more than one distance learning class. That's a federal regulation. So we were amazed when the Immigration Service said with students that were in the US and then ended up departing and taking distance learning classes, they could do that. Right now, Stanford's saying you're going to have to be in the US in order to attend school. So that's what it is. All right. Next question.
Who qualifies for an expedite appointment? In India, we have appointments only in late August, which would mean arriving on campus just in time for the MS program starting September 20th.
So I think embassies and consulates differ in their policies around expedites. Some accept them, some don't. From what we've heard anecdotally, based on our experience last year, was that students had the greatest sort of rate of success requesting expedites if their original appointment was after the start date of their program on their I-20. So if your start date is September 20th and you can only get an appointment at an embassy or consulate on October 1st, then you have grounds on which to ask for an expedite.
Right. The earlier question was the student had an appointment for August. Well,
Right.
there's
August
there's
is
no
fine,
problem.
Right. There's no problem there.
Right.
So that's what we've seen in the past.
Yep.
So if you have an appointment in August and your program starts in September, then you're lucky. You're actually quite lucky.
Yep. All right. Next question, please.
How does the process to get the visa change for incoming pre-doctoral fellows? Some of us should start in July.
No, wait. If you're a Stanford student who's been admitted for fall quarter, you're starting September 20th,
Right.
not in July. I don't understand the July issue. If you've been accepted,
Understand what you mean by pre-doctoral fellow. We have doctoral candidates, doctoral students.
this workshop is for incoming students.
Yeah.
If you're a researcher, this is not for you. This session is not for you.
Yeah. If you're visiting student researcher, this is not the correct.
No. Right. And that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, me too.
Yep.
Referring to English for foreign students, perhaps. That also
No. That's not what that is about. They would have said English for foreign students. All right. Next question, please.
We've mentioned that we've had students go to other third countries to apply for visas. Do we have a success ratio that
No,
we can share?
no,
No.
we don't. Because sometimes you guys don't get back to us. This is what we're hearing. This is what we're emailing back and forth with students. And they say, well, I was able to get this. I was able to do that. But there's no statistics, no percentage, nothing like that exists.
Visa applications are so based on the individual. We could not possibly say that you are guaranteed success.
Right.
Singapore or Mexico, as opposed to.
Right. Right. There's a risk. There's
It
a risk
also
you could,
depends on
right.
you,
Right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Background and what you're studying and what your nationality is and many other factors. So we just don't keep those kinds of statistics.
Yep.
As a deferred student, I already completed the DS-160 last year. Do I have to complete a new DS-160?
Yeah, that's a good question. Your funding, in the case of the DS 2019, oh, wait. Did you
Yes.
say DS 160? Oh,
So the DS-160 is an application to the embassy for an appointment. So if you need a new appointment, I would assume you'd have to apply once again.
yeah, and pay the fee again, unfortunately.
Right. So I think that's probably the answer is yes, you'll need to reapply, but you could always reach out to the embassy or consulate and ask.
Yep, exactly. Next
Again,
question.
There's quite a few questions about vaccines and things like that. We're not going to answer those
Yep,
just because we don't know the answer. The information will come probably a little bit later from Stanford. So unfortunately, you just have to kind of wait for that update.
Also, we very much appreciate your gratitude and your thank yous in the Q&A, but it's not necessary. We're trying to answer as many questions as possible. So we feel you, but you don't need to thank us in the Q&A.
We've also gotten some questions that seems like maybe some current students have trickled into this webinar and are asking some random.
bye, bye-bye.
non-
I need to focus on students that are
so
coming.
sorry
to
guys,
Stanford.
we will
Yeah.
not be answering your
No.
question.
No, we're having too much fun with the ones that are going to be here coming. We got to help them out. Okay.
All right, I carry a Filipino passport, but I'm
Mhm.
currently a resident in the UK. Does that count as a third country application?
Yeah, you don't have citizenship from the UK.
Yeah.
That counts as a third country national. Correct. Exactly. Yep. Next question.
As an incoming PhD student whose length of study is variable, what's the correct answer if the CBP officer asks me, how long are you planning on staying in the country?
Okay. You never want to say you want to stay permanently, that you love America, you want to stay permanently. You're going to be honest. We issued you an I-20 for a very long time, 7 years. Okay. Years ago, grad admissions would issue them for 4 years. We used to complain saying, no, PhD students don't finish in 4. Then got switched to 5. So we eventually got it to 7. You certainly should finish your degree by then. But the reason we issued for such a long time is that some of you take longer. And you got to be always honest when you talk to an immigration official at the port of entry or the embassy official. If they see an I-20 that's dated till 2028, you can say, look, I hope to finish my degree, within 5 years. But sometimes a thesis takes longer. It just depends. But I'd love to finish within 5 or 6 years, but time will tell. Now, the way you answer that way won't affect the length of time they issue the visa. In other words, if you said, I can finish, I'm super smart, I can finish the degree in 3 years. By the way, I've only met one PhD student who was able to finish a degree in 3 years at Stanford. Anyway, actually there's two. But the thing is, they're going to give you the visa at the time of entry. The embassy official gave you the visa for 5 years, typically, let's say, to enter the country back and forth in F1 status. The embassy official is the one that determines that they allow you into the country. The CBP officer will let you in. You just answer honestly, say, I'd like to finish within 5 or 6 years. That's probably a good answer. It's probably a true answer. If it's true, that's the way you answer. Okay. Next question.
Can the national interest exception be used for any nationalities? In my case, Brazil.
Well, it's a J1 question. If you're asking for an F1, you're not doing the exception, right? So
I think some students get confused and they
Okay.
think since the national interest waiver can be used for the Schengen area countries to come in, they say, can it be used for the Brazilians to come in? That it unfortunately is not the case. It's something specific to the Schengen area countries.
Yep.
So if you're in Brazil, there is no national interest exemption.
those are 26 countries, mostly in Europe there. Yeah. Okay. Next question.
If my previous Sevis record was terminated upon graduation from a different school, do I need to reapply an F1 even if the previous F1 under another school is still valid? I'm guessing we're talking about the visa.
Exactly. So that student is talking about the visa stamp in the passport. So my earlier slide, I mentioned that yes, even though you had obtained F1 status before under a different Sevis number, and now you're coming to Stanford with a new Sevis number, but the visa in the passport based on the earlier degree is still valid. Yes, you may use that visa stamp along with Stanford's I-20 to enter the United States. We conservatively suggest that you carry with you, but don't show it unless they ask you, carry with you that original I-20 you used to obtain that F1 status visa in the passport and status upon entry. So, but you show your Stanford I-20 when you enter the US. Keep the other one folded. If an officer sees that I-20, they're going to send you to secondary inspection. They can say, oh, what's that about? Okay, so if you put it in your passport and you have two I-20s there, these people are trained to see documents, and you just pique their curiosity why you have another document in there. Okay, but what I'm saying is don't hide stuff. I'm just keep it with you, but don't show it unless you're being asked about that scenario. Okay. Next question.
So this is also about the visa stamp guidance. They said the new guidance says it only works for students re-entering the US. Is the different school name applicable to a student entering for the first time?
Well, they're basing this issue of the visa stamping, let's just say a valid visa is a valid visa, to put it simple, right? So you got the valid visa based on an earlier degree. Now you have a new one that says initial attendance. We've gotten clarification on this, and our understanding is that you can use the previous valid visa to enter the country based on Stanford's new I-20 with a new initial entry noted on the I-20 with a different Sevis number. So that's what we've been told. If you get hassled at the port of entry, very, very politely ask to speak to an immigration supervisor. But the minute you ask that, you're going to upset the immigration official that you're trying to be nice to and have you be let into the country. So, but technically that's what we've been told. All right. So that's what we're advising. You should be able to enter with that visa. Next question.
Can I schedule visa appointments in multiple countries at the same time to have backup plans?
I believe the DS-160 only lets you primarily mention one place, one location. But if you're saying, can I apply for visa appointments somewhere else? I'm assuming the answer is yes. You pay the money, they're going to take your money. Go back and read the DS form carefully, the instructions. But I believe it will let you do that. Okay, but and I'm assuming that the embassy officials would be able to find you in the system, that you have another application pending, one in Singapore and one in Chile or somewhere. So yeah, I would say conservatively, I believe the database will let you take your money. Yeah.
I see a lot of Brazilian students applying from different countries saying they had to do it. Is it really the only option for someone from Brazil? Is there a chance I might get an appointment in time in my own country?
That's a hard question to answer. We don't know. We don't know if the embassy officials are going to open up the gates, the doors to the embassy or consulates in Rio or wherever you're going to go. And that's a hard question to answer because we're optimistic that things will get better. But my gosh, we never thought that we thought maybe 2 or 3 months we would be away from our offices and everything would settle down, but it hasn't. And look how things have gotten in India now. I mean, it's just tragic. And so in other places, it goes by country, by city, as to the decisions being made to open up the embassies and consulates. We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen when in Sao Paulo, maybe they'll open up. At this point, nobody knows. Eventually, but who knows when? We don't have a crystal ball to see the future on this one. Okay. Next question, please.
Are the departments for PhDs asked to prepare protocols for those who cannot make it to the fall quarter but can to the winter quarter? For example, core courses which are typically done in the fall quarter, which may be possible to join remotely during fall or do once they come in the winter.
Again, there's no planned remote coursework during fall. So you really are going to have to contact your department, and every program is different in terms of their requirements. So please contact your department.
Yep.
So we've had a couple questions about like OPT and employment and things like that. So we won't answer those here because we will have individual webinars and things like that during orientation that go over things like OPT and employment. So unfortunately, we'll just kind of have to wait for those.
Yeah, you know what? We have
the longer we stay on, the more questions we get. So I think we have 11 questions left.
Yep.
I think we have to finish up with those 11.
Yep. Let's do that.
And then we can always have another one of these, right?
Right. And we have recorded Zoom session. I spoke for an hour and 30 minutes, I think, on employment issues beyond graduation. Don't worry about it. You're going to be able to get a work permit. But we have all this information on our website. And we'll do specific workshops. Mario and Valerie have done workshops on CPT and OPT. Mario did one last week on the 23rd on curricular training. There's plenty of time for answering those questions later. Next question, please.
After I had my visa interview at the U.S. Embassy, are the visa issuing times prolonged as well, or is it mainly just the time to get the interview?
They're both. The time to get the interview, and then after you get the interview, then pre-pandemic, you could get a visa in 3 to 7 days, 3 to 12, 14 days. That would be sort of the range of time that we would see. Now, I don't know. Once you get approved, could they issue the visa, a week later to 2 weeks later? I think the probability is good, but that's a very specific question that you'd have to ask the embassy officials, and it's hard to reach embassy officials on that issue. Okay.
Apart from family spousal ties to a country, what else can we show to a consular officer to show that we intend to return to our country of origin?
Well, not many of us owned property when we were that age, but ownership of property, maybe you departed a job, and when you go back, they said, look, when you come back, we'd love to have you, connection, that type of connection. Your parents are elderly, let's say that they're, let's say that they're my age, but I don't think I'm elderly.
I'd say it's less about at this stage in your life, your ties to your home country, and
Right.
more about expressing immigrant intent
Yeah.
interview itself. So this is a mistake our students make all the time. They get in their interview and they are asked, what are your plans after graduation? And many of them say, I intend to live and work in the United States indefinitely. Well, that's a big mistake because you're on a non-immigrant visa as an F1 or J1.
Right. Remember, I explained duration of status. That's a legal time frame that you're permitted to stay. Now, could you stay longer? Eventually, yes. Maybe you can get an employment-based
Don't
visa,
say that in the
but
interview.
but you're not focusing on that. You're saying, I'm coming here. I'm coming to study. That's what I want to do. And of course, you want to be honest and applying to an embassy official, and that the plans are to come and get your degree and then go back and help in your country. You know. And be with your family and so on and so forth, you know. But you got to focus just that you're here temporarily in the US.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Next question.
Does being a father of a U.S. citizen qualify someone for the national interest exception?
Never heard that question.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question either, and it's an interesting one. And I think it would take further investigation to see. I know that there's fine print around those NIEs, and I'm not sure whether having a US citizen as a dependent is one of those things. But if you write us an email to international students at stanford.edu, we could look into that, right?
Yeah, but I would also say,
Yeah.
I mean, that the question that the embassy.
The embassy.
Another risk of, another risk of highlighting the fact that you have a US citizen child is that they might look at your intent. Do you have a non-immigrant intent, or do you intend to stay here based on the fact you have US-based family members who are born there?
Yeah,
And
but
that might pose a problem for you.
it could, but I think the child, well, it depends on the age of the child, but it would take years for that benefit to be able to be submitted to gain a permanent residency. Anyway, we're getting sidetracked.
Yeah, just write an email about that.
Yep. Next question.
Can you apply for a DS-160 an appointment pending receipt of the I-20?
No, because in order to complete the DS-160, you need your Sevis number.
Right.
So
But
you're
if you,
gonna have to wait for your Sevis number in order to file your DS-160.
exactly. Yep. Next question.
I'm going to be driving into the US from Canada, and
Mhm.
I'm planning on going through a rural border. Should I prolong my drive and go to a larger border, or do you
Okay,
think it'll be a
that's a
problem?
really good question.
Yeah.
Here's what's going to happen. They're going to try to wave you through because they're thinking you're just crossing the border to go get gas that might be cheaper. I'm not sure. Or eating.
Orlando, I thought the border was closed with Canada except for people arriving by air.
Students could be permitted to enter, I believe.
Through the land crossings? I thought,
Yeah, I wouldn't advise driving in.
Yeah,
No.
no, but they have a car and they want to bring it.
I know, but you may not be able to. I remember, the reason I'm thinking is this because I remember that a lot of people who wanted to come into the United States during the winter from Canada were not allowed to with their cars, so they had to fly in. So
The student just messaged us and said it's not closed.
it's not closed.
Yeah,
So
you know, I mean,
can't drive across right now.
there's crossings with Mexico that are open, and they've said, I believe they've said, people that have business to do in the US, you know, and I believe they had said students too, because there's a lot of border crossers that live along the border that just go to, let's say, someone living in Mexicali, Mexico, crosses the border into Imperial Valley to go to Imperial Valley College, 16 miles away from the border.
So I'm seeing here, it says non-essential travel between the US and Canada is closed through May 21st, 2021, but that may change for the fall.
Yeah, so you could check later on the Customs Border Protection website.
Yeah.
But what I was getting to is, ideally you cross one that is better staffed, or it's not, in other words, if they let you in and they don't record your entry, you entered as a tourist.
Yeah.
You want to be sent to secondary inspection. And most likely, most people don't want to go to secondary inspection. But when you cross with a vehicle, they're going to want to see that you have insurance, by the way, on that vehicle. And and whatever customs paperwork you need on that vehicle, you need to sort it out before you cross the border. And what else? Yeah, you want to get stopped so that they acknowledge your entry through the database, the I-94 electronic system, your entry as an F1 DS student. So let's see how things change in May. And you're able to come in like that. You got a long drive, you know, but that's what it is. And you have to have insurance. And eventually you probably will need to get a California driver's license. But that's a separate issue. Okay. We can talk about orientation later on about those issues. Those are the type of issues that get brought up. And when we do workshops in August and September for orientation. Next question.
For PhD students, is the stipend stated in the letter of acceptance or SGF enough proof of money funding to apply for the visa, or do we need other support?
Well, the funding, remember that we talked about the funding earlier, that we issue an I-20 based on a 9-month budget for a PhD student. So let's say we issued it based on $80-something thousand you're getting from the department for 7 years. An embassy official could say, hey, let me see your letter of acceptance to Stanford. And the letter of acceptance to Stanford said, we'll give you money for 5 years. Well, we issued the I-20 in good faith for 7 because the law allows us to do that. Okay. So technically you could be required to show funding for all of the years that you're at Stanford. But I think normally that one letter that you have of acceptance from Stanford that says that you won the lottery or research assistantship or teaching assistantship initially for 5 years, normally that's good enough to get the visa and the passport. Traditionally, I've not seen a student saying, hey, Rolando, you issued us an I-20 for 7 years. My letter of funding is only for 5. They refuse to issue me a visa. I've never seen that, okay? So I'm optimistic you won't have any problems. But be prepared to show funding for future years, okay?
So
All
a
right.
student asked what a student from the Schengen area asked what the NIE, which stands for National Interest Exception, is. So for students from the Schengen area, if you're an F1 student, you automatically qualify for the NIE, the National Interest Exception. So you will be allowed to come into the US as an F1 student. For J1 students going to be on J1, you have to actually apply separately for this National Interest Exception at the consulate. So F1, you're automatically qualified for it. You don't have to do anything special. You're going to be able to get into the US once you have your F1 visa. J1s, you need to contact the consulate because you're going to have to do something special in order to get it.
Yeah, and I believe that exception is only good for 30 days, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I forgot to say that the earlier time when that question came up. Yep, good questions. Next question, please.
That is all the questions.
My goodness. All right. Well, very, very good. Thanks all for listening and being here with us. I want to tell you that you are part of our community here at Stanford. I know that you're far away right now, and just bear with us. You need to be patient. You need to be resilient. And I always end by saying also be safe, okay? And I know we're going to get a chance to meet. Eventually, we're going to get a chance to meet at the Bechtel International Center. And the Bechtel International Center, let me see, let me go to that picture here. This was all the presentation. So here we are. This is our building. And eventually we're going to get to meet. We didn't have, if I know some of you are marrying and bringing dependents. We have an excellent office that did not get mentioned about spouses and partners, spouse office, support office. That's excellent. I would say it's probably one of the best ones in the nation. And you'll get to see information on our website about those of you that will bring your dependents to the United States. We're here to support you. Please bear with us during this very, very, incredible times that we're all living through. And again, we'll have another presentation like this probably in May. And if we know or hear anything That's super important. We will email you. We keep in contact through stanford.edu email address. From now on, that's the email. You're going to mark that as your preferred email address because that's the way we're going to get a hold of you. All right. Anything else, folks? Is that it?
Oh, we just wish everybody well and have a good summer. And we wish you a lot of success with your visa appointments.
Very good. Very good. All right. We'll see you and then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.